Alright, so today we're going to be talking about Jisu. Jisu is a professional artist in the Smash community that was a prominent figure during the July 2020 MeToo movement. She is widely regarded as a hero for helping victims of sexual abuse share their stories against some of the Smash community's biggest names. However, new evidence has recently been presented strongly suggesting that Jisu lied about nearly everything during the movement. Along with her other offenses against the community, she should, without a shadow of a doubt, be removed. However, not only has every prominent community member failed to condemn her toxic behavior, many have straight up supported Jisu in her lies and deception, both vocally and financially. No matter how many lives she ruins or how many people she deceives and manipulates, she has gotten away with everything. But this game ends today. Today, we ban Jisu. This video will be broken into two main sections. The first section is intended to properly and thoroughly lay out the case against Jisu while providing the necessary and relevant evidence to support my claims. While nothing I'm about to present is new information and has already been beaten to death several times before, I still need to give proper context to why Jisu needs to be banned. The second section is meant to call out the prominent community figureheads that actively support and enable Jisu's actions. While most people have yet to condemn Jisu's behavior, the three top figures covered in this video have done the most to hide the damages she's caused. It is my opinion that these people are guilty by association and should be held accountable as well. In order to help you understand what Jisu has done to warrant a ban, I will be referencing Article 2 of the former SSB Code of Conduct. While the conduct panel has been disbanded for a little over a year now, the document still acts as a solid baseline for what constitutes an offense in the community, and has recently been used to justify the ban of top player Hack's money. According to Article 2 of the SSB Code of Conduct, Jisu has committed 3 Level 3 offenses and 1 Level 2 offense. 2.3.1 Physical assault of another participant or any other person, including a spectator, during a match or event. 2.3.3 Repeated, unwanted, and unwelcome advances of another participant, primarily through online means, malicious gossip with the intent of manipulating the victim's social circle, defamation of character. 2.3.6 Openly advocating for or encouraging. 2.3.5 Doxing, that is, posting or threatening to post other people's personally identifying information, especially as a way to escalate or continue harassment. This includes, but is not limited to, information not publicly available, such as the victim's address, social security or identification number, or vehicle/license plate information. 2.2.1 Directed and malicious intimidation, harassment, or bullying of any participant, whether by language or conduct. Article 7 states that a first-time Level 3 offense is met with a ban of up to 2 years. However, multiple infractions can result in a lifetime ban. Hacks was banned on the basis of committing a Level 2 and Level 3 offense, which led to an indefinite, albeit not permanent, ban. With Hacks' ban as a baseline example, I believe that a lifetime ban is warranted for these offenses. Naturally, when accusing someone of anything, let alone infractions of this magnitude, the burden of proof falls upon the one making the accusation. This video will provide proper and sufficient evidence to convict Jisu of these offenses. On June 25th, 2021, a person came out with a story accusing Jisu of smacking 2 different people at an EVO after party in 2019. The person wishes to remain anonymous, and I will refer to this person as Bob for the rest of the segment, but if Jisu would like to present anyone who can refute Bob's claim, she is more than welcome to do so. However, such a person does not exist.
There was a EVO party, I believe EVO 2019. I was directly talking to a person and I mentioned the word girlfriend. I said, even your girlfriend likes Mark, so I'm coming back for my #1 spot. And immediately she just slapped me on my face. I was just gonna let it go. I said, okay, people's been drinking, it's fine. I let it go. So I continued talking to the person, and then a second smack comes across my face. So the guy that I'm speaking to, he literally had to stop the girl and tell her, hey, you can't be going around smacking people. But she kind of gave him like a gesture like, don't tell me what to do, I'm my own woman.
Bob also provided us with screenshots of Jisu apologizing for her actions that day. Unless Jisu can somehow prove that these conversations were doctored, then this is definitive proof that this situation occurred. I want to make this 100% clear that Jisu is not being genuine with her apology. This is due to several reasons that are backed up by these messages. Firstly, Jisu was dragged into apologizing by someone else. She did not approach Bob under her own volition. Secondly, before she went to apologize, she first took to Twitter to complain about being called someone's girlfriend and how it belittled the accomplishments and work of women. Unfortunately, she deleted the first tweet of the thread, but judging by the messages sent between her and Bob, it seems that her tweet did not include the context of what actually occurred, and Jisu admits this. Just look at the tone of these messages. Does this sound like someone who is sorry for what they did, or does this sound like someone who is more worried about being called girlfriend than the fact that she assaulted two people? Keep in mind that these messages are in reference to a public tweet Jisu made before she even thought to apologize to Bob, and the tweet didn't even account for his side of the story. Bob puts it beautifully here when he says, "You're only trying to understand your side of the story." Jisu is clearly more concerned with defending herself and acting like Bob is the villain instead of actually owning up to her mistakes, and this is compounded by all the excuses she piles on throughout this conversation. At first she says that being called girlfriend is what triggered her to hit him, but then shortly after says it's not about that and is instead a bad habit from being severely disciplined as a kid. She goes from saying she was drunk to now slightly buzzed. She can't even keep her own story straight.
Yeah, she did come to me to apologize to me, but only because somebody else reached out to her, and I honestly believe she wasn't going to apologize to me. While she did say sorry, I felt like it was very ungenuine based on how the way she was responding. She kept telling me exactly the reason why she was hitting me and how she grew up, and I've also grew up in a terrible neighborhood, and I've never once laid my hands on anybody, so I didn't like that apology. She was confusing like her whole story, saying she was slightly buzzed, she was drunk, she wasn't drunk, and I was like, well, if you weren't drunk, that means you're cognitive of your behavior and what you did, so that kind of makes it worse. She smacked another person as well in the same night. I won't exaggerate, it probably was between 5 and 10 minutes, literally in the same night.
It's like she tries to deflect all the blame away from the person who actually deserves it, herself. Nobody was belittling her success or work by calling her someone's girlfriend, and even if they were, this isn't a justification to physically assault someone.
Also, I was going to let it go, but she kept harping on it and saying your name wasn't added, and I knew that tweet was specifically about me, so it wasn't fair that she was leaving out information and misleading people, trying to pivot the story into people calling her girlfriend based on the work ethic that she had put in the community. That wasn't the case. She literally hit me in my face because I was talking to another person and said, your girlfriend.
This is where we get to Jisu's level 2 offense, intimidation and bullying. When Bob realizes that Jisu isn't sorry for what she did and is trying to shift the story on what actually occurred, Bob tells Jisu that he's going to post his side of the story of what really took place. This is when Jisu says this.
Okay, delete it.
So let me get this straight. Your original tweet wasn't about Bob and was just a general blanket tweet about women being belittled, but when Bob threatens to post his side of the story, you'll take your tweet down?
She deleted her tweet about me, even though it didn't have my name. I knew it was about me. She was like, okay, I'll delete it, because she was afraid of me. She tried to silence me and try to tell me, oh, but the story's not about you. And I said, yes, it is. And I said, you know what? I'm actually going to tell everybody my side of the story. She said, okay, I'm going to delete it. It actually was a way to silence me. I didn't think of it at that time. And that's why I say, now that I look back on it, it did mentally scar me.
While most people probably won't care about someone getting slapped in 2019, this situation still proves that Jisu is an unreliable narrator who will twist the truth to protect herself. Keep this in mind going forward, as manipulating stories is a pattern of behavior for Jisu. False allegations are bad not just because they can ruin people's lives, but because they are a spit in the face to actual victims of these crimes. Jisu seems to agree with this sentiment.
If you make shit up to cancel someone, like actually, just for like your 10 seconds of fame, you're a piece of shit.
If you actually make false allegations and hurt the cases of current and future victims purely for your own selfish reasons, then you're the fucking scum of the earth.
I also want to emphasize that Zero deserves to be banned for what he did, and this section is simply meant to indict Jisu as an opportunistic liar. I am not trying to exonerate Zero in any way. However, while Zero was later found guilty of a completely separate allegation made by a third party that doesn't retroactively exonerate Jisu for lying. On July 5th, 2020, Jisu released a document titled The Truth About Zero, Katie, and Sky, where she explains all of her experiences and allegations against Zero and Sky Williams, who we will be covering in the next section. This document that I have on screen is actually a revised version. She ended up having to remove a section because it was a false claim she pushed without anyone's permission. It said that Zero had begun dating his then girlfriend Vanessa when she was 15 and he was 20. Using my ultra psychic superpower known as the Wayback Machine, I was able to recover the original version of the document that was posted on July 5th, 2020, before this story was cut out and removed. Let's read this omitted section of the document together to learn more about what Jisu was alleging at the time.
Firstly, I'm sorry Vanessa if this isn't what you wanted.
We're not even a sentence in, and you've already managed to contradict the first sentence of your own document. And this is self-admitted, by the way, because she acknowledges this throughout the rest of the paragraph.
I have to make amends with calling this out because it was always a point of controversy that was swept under the rug. Due to current allegations though, I have to reopen the case. If you or Zero present evidence stating otherwise, I formally apologize for bringing it up, but currently we can't excuse what accounts from others have shown.
Here's a better idea, Jisu. How about you ask Vanessa first, not only for evidence of her age, but for permission to even share the story in the first place, and only then post the allegation once you actually know what's going on. What is so difficult about that?
I make it clear to them, like, I'm not going to share anything unless you explicitly want me to. You're free to say anything you want, like nothing is going to be aired out. I'm not judging you, and it's not your fault.
To recap, this was an issue brought up back in the day that Zero quickly put to rest and probably corroborated with Vanessa to sweep the issue away. There are several people I know in the community who have just heard that she's underage by a significant amount down the grapevine, but always just a rumor. One of our former roommates always called them out on it and was promptly blocked and put on Zero's blacklist. Unless we get Vanessa's birth certificate or something, all I can do is air out what we know.
Yeah, unless we get her birth certificate. Or if we just do 2 quick Google searches. In fact, even that wasn't necessary. The funny part about this is that she made this exact allegation 2 days prior to posting this document, and several people pointed this out in the replies. Did you just ignore them and continue believing this even though everyone was proving you wrong? I hate to break this to you, Jisu, but the block button doesn't only work for you. We can still see the replies. They don't magically go away because you block them for yourself. The bottom line is that Jisu was made well aware that these allegations were false before she put them in this document. So the excuse that she didn't know it was false literally doesn't work here, especially since she didn't even ask Vanessa. She then goes on to post screenshots of her conversations with anonymous people to prove that this allegation spawned from rumors around the community.
I need the Carfax. When did Zero start dating Vanessa? Damn, that's a hard recall. I'm almost certain it was while she was underage, almost 100% sure, but I don't know the exact timeline or the age that he was. There should be some way to prove that though, or show it. Let me see what year it was when I wrote my note. Also, any idea how old she is right now? Nah, she was like 15.
How are you gonna begin this screenshot with, I need the Carfax, but then just say outright, nah, she was like 15? You're asking them a question and then answering it for them. If you knew the answer before you asked the question, why did you even ask it? Not only are you trying to manipulate the story, but you aren't even doing that right. You were supposed to crop this bit out so it would look like you're trying to get information and not like a quiz show.
I don't remember where I heard it, but I wouldn't just make it up. And like, we'll never know unless we get their birth certificates or something, but all signs point to yes.
You came out with a formal allegation against Zero, and instead of getting the actual evidence or even permission to share the story in the first place, you only showed screenshots confirming that it was just a rumor? This was her proof. This was her queen takes f7. This was the dagger in her eyes, the damning evidence that would prove her accusation beyond any reasonable doubt. On top of this already dumb allegation, she then compounds it with another allegation where Zero would physically abuse Vanessa. And once again, instead of asking Vanessa for anything on the matter, she used rumors as her source. Okay, so knowing everything up until now, let's see how Vanessa responded to this.
I was outed in a story of me getting physically abused and how my age was something else, which is not true at all.
Like seriously, what did Jisu expect to happen here? You not only lied about the situation, but you completely disrespected Vanessa and her privacy in the process, which is also the reason why I believe Jisu's actions violate section 2.3.5 of the SSB Code of Conduct, which makes doxing an offense. The sentence, "unless we get Vanessa's birth certificate or something," led to hordes of people hounding Vanessa to release her birth certificate. Had someone actually gotten their hands on it, or anything equivalent, they would have certainly posted it. Not only did Jisu incite the harassment against Vanessa, which could have led to the release of private information, but the harassment actually left Vanessa emotionally scarred in the process.
That event gave me PTSD. Like, I've never suffered from PTSD or anything like that.
And let me give you the benefit of the doubt, Jisu. Maybe it was just a rumor that was going around, and you made your allegation during a heated moment, as you put it. Even then, you were made very aware that the allegations were false 2 days before you put it in your document. So that removes any plausible deniability you would have had. The real issue I have with Jisu isn't that she ruined Zero's life or anything like that. The real issue is what I like to call donating to charity with monopoly money. You pretend to be a hero and an icon for an important cause when your contribution to that cause is fraudulent and self-serving. In fact, out of all the allegations against Zero in Jisu's document, only one turned out to be true, and as I said in the beginning, it was originally made by an entirely different person. In this one incident, Jisu managed to commit 2 level 3 offenses and 1 level 2 offense. And the worst part is that it doesn't even stop here. The most egregious allegations Jisu made were against Sky Williams. From 2014 to 2020, Sky owned several content houses that housed several prominent figures in the Smash community. During this time, several instances of sexual abuse occurred in these houses, one of the victims being Jisu. In her document, Jisu essentially blames Sky for allowing these events to occur in his houses.
I have been talking to all my former roommates, and while I didn't live there for the full duration at that particular address, there are many cases building up against him. These cases will be brought to light under their jurisdiction, and I've agreed to wait until they're ready. Again, I can only tell my story, but when there's story after story after story, there's a case.
Before we dive into this, let me give you some context about how Jisu, who was 16 at the time, ended up living in one of the Sky houses. It began when MeToo King, who was living with Sky at the time, asked if he could invite his friend Vidjo to live there as well, since they were working on a game together.
Now, I think before you mentioned the reason you actually had your roommates was because at some point you and one of your friends from Ohio wanted to probably design a game.
Yeah, we were gonna make a game together.
Vidjo, who for context is the person who groomed Jisu, informed Sky that 2 people would also be coming along with him as well. However, he didn't mention that one of those people would be Jisu, a 16-year-old.
The first survivor is Jisu, and I'm gonna call her abuser V. V's conception into my home was that he knew MeToo King. MeToo King was living with me at the time, and he was very good friends with MeToo King, so he just said, you know, I'm gonna move in with him, because they were already planning on living together. I've known MeToo King for over 10 years, and I know that V was an esteemed Smash player, so of course I just said yes. V explained that he's going to be working on his game while he's living here. He said that he had 2 people that were gonna come with him to work on the game. I was not told that one of those people would be Jisu, and it was never disclosed to me that she was a minor. They arrived around July 18th. I didn't have any idea that they actually moved into the house until I went to go to their room later on that night. The noise of the moving furniture they were moving in was just drowned out by the hustle and bustle of 20 people. I was streaming at the time, and it is literally impossible for me to see anyone come through the front door while I'm streaming, while I'm at my computer. I eventually made my way into their room. I kind of already was acquainted with V, but then I saw Jisu. I noticed that Jisu looked extremely young, but in my mind, I genuinely thought there is no way that someone is trafficking a minor into my house all the way from Ohio, so I didn't think about it. I didn't want my first conversation with her to be, "Hi, my name is Sky. how old are you? So instead, I introduced myself, I shook her hand, and I left.
So essentially, Jisu was smuggled into Sky's house without his knowledge, and Sky didn't even know she was a minor until he overheard someone asking Jisu how old she was. Now the voice of reason might say, well, when he learned she was a minor, why did he let her stay at the house? And this is a very valid point. The way Sky saw it at the time is that he was letting an ambitious artist stay and work on the game. In addition, the house was located in Los Angeles, where there were many great opportunities for Jisu as an artist, and Sky wanted to give her access to those options. So while in hindsight, letting her stay at the house was a terrible idea, and one of the things you can actually criticize Sky for, there were other legitimate reasons Sky allowed her to stay besides encouraging predatory behavior. We'll come back to this later, as this is one of the abuse stories that make up the case. But for now, let's cover the tangible lies that exist within Jisu's document, since these are the ones that constitute a level 3 offense.
On top of already allowing a 15-year-old runaway girl to live in the house filled with alcohol, drugs, and several older men, he attempted to chide me into moving back in with him in a similar living situation right after I got out of hell, but in exchange for work.
She then provides screenshots of Sky attempting to chide her into moving back in, but conveniently leaves out the screenshots where he says it's entirely her choice if she wants to return to the house for work or to visit, etc. He even offers to pay for the plane tickets, and 2 weeks later, Jisu accepted the offer. But I mean, hey guys, this document is impartial and truthful because Jisu said so.
I didn't cross out information about what studio and who's involved with it because it's already been all debunked, but in general, any and all projects involving Sky have always been false, grandiose promises with no actual pay.
Let's see what video she has Okay, apparently this was a video Technicals made about Thunder Gaming CEO Christian Bishop, which he later took down. As far as the no actual pay comment, here's a statement from YouTuber Mighty Keef. To my knowledge, me and the rest of the sponsored team have always been paid. The tournament winners, paid. Casters who aren't sponsored, paid. So who exactly is getting scammed? Shareholders maybe? Not possible. There are only 2 shareholders, and they pour the money straight into the Smash community journey with the setups, equipment, lighting, music, and streams, etc. Not Christian. Considering that Jisu has a history of lying, I'm more inclined to believe Keef here.
After talking more, he started to make such crazy claims like even attempting to call CPS or things like putting his career on the line, which I do not recall, period. This was later to be debunked when I approached the roommate he mentioned, and they said that they don't remember ever doing that. Instead, what they do remember is the only real time I recall anyone ever actually pulling me aside to try and get the truth from me. They've asked me to abstain from posting any screenshots with them, but please trust me on this.
Please trust me on this? We've already established that you're a dishonest narrator, and you're pushing a he said she said situation as objective fact that debunked Sky's claim. On top of this, Jisu isn't even being completely truthful here when she implies that the unnamed roommate was the only one to check up on her.
Right after Jisu and Jesse left the house, Jisu says to Sky,
"You really were a light in the darkness when I felt cornered and backed in, and I really love that you decided to stay by and ask me what's wrong, even when I didn't say anything. And even if you think I'm a weirdo, or if I'm not actually your friend, I think you were more of a friend to me than most have been in crucial situations."
This conversation suggests that Sky was at least checking up on her well-being and how she was doing while she was in the house. But if you read her document, you would assume that the unnamed roommate was the only one to do so.
Again, there's nothing confirming that Sky did or didn't call CPS, but one thing is for certain, that Jisu is being dishonest here.
Even more confusing is that before, whenever I brought up how he never paid me, he just ignored/ghosted me. This resulted me in giving up, but when I brought it up again, look at how his story has changed.
Okay, Jisu, I'll show proof. This is a PayPal transaction to Jesse Werner for $500.
Is there any other payment? Like, did you ever send payments directly to Jisu, or was it always through Jesse? How often did you send it to Jesse?
That is the only time I have ever sent money to Jesse. I know for an absolute fact that there was no way for me to send anything directly to Jisu because their stuff was together. Their rent was paid together, their bills were paid together, their food was paid together. It wasn't separate.
When I stopped responding on Facebook, he turned to Twitter. I have no idea what he's been trying to do, but I just gave him one last chance to do the right thing. Again, I always planned on coming forward with my account, but as far as everyone else and their stories, that's not my place. If you're still in SoCal, I actually want to sit down and talk about this.
Wow, Jisu is actually giving Sky a chance to do the right thing and own up to any mistakes he may have made. I wonder how that's gonna go. Sky is an unhinged serial killer because he reached out to me after I made statements regarding his house. By the way, when she says she gave him one last chance to do the right thing, she basically blackmailed him into supporting her lying about Vanessa.
After collecting myself, I realized what was actually going on. After allegations of D1, K-Taro, and anti-surfaced, he knew he was next. He knew my story and everything related to it is his nail in the coffin, so he tried everything in his power to make me believe that he's on my side, despite never having told me any of these things years ago. What's more hurtful is that, part of me wants to believe in him, because again, I truly never get to know him that well, but something for certain is that actions speak louder than words, and he never backs his actions.
This is just not true. Months before this document was released, Sky offered to call out Jisu's abuser, and Jisu declined the offer. Even going back to when they lived at the house, Sky attempted to investigate what Vidya was doing, bringing a 16-year-old to the house.
There was one time when I came to visit, Jisu's computer was still on. I saw the soft glow and it was like on V's face, and V was playing a game, and I go over, but she's asleep. She's asleep in the bunk. But then I realized that all of the bunks are taken and the only place for V to sleep is in that bunk because she's pushed up all the way at the end of it. That to me was an invitation to take my investigation and my concern further. I point blank asked him, "Are you sexually active with Jisu?" He says, "LOL, no." After this question, V completely changed his attitude towards me, as did Jisu. They started closing and locking their doors, putting up blanket barriers over their room. It got a lot harder to like access them. You know, you couldn't just walk in anymore. You would kind of have to be like, hey, like, and then you'd pretty much get gate kept right there. Where like, oh no, I'm busy or I can't talk right now. Jisu went from politely saying that she just had to focus on this to telling me to like, you know, mind my own business or stop trying to get me to not work on the game. Like she doesn't want to work on her own brand, stop talking about it. She only wants to work on V's game, just stuff like that. She alleged that I was evil and I was just trying to get her away from working on V's game even though it was her dream. She later expressed that the only reason why she said anything like that was because V convinced her that I was evil and I was trying to ruin their game.
When we lived there, he immediately from the bat, he's like, hey, I don't like these people, don't get close to them. You know, me only knowing him, I was like, I just trusted him.
What threw me off my trail was that 6 people were living in that room, and I would think that if they were engaging in sexual activity, one of them would come forward, but you know, no one allegedly heard anything. I wasn't satisfied with that, but it was hard to beat because they were in the room all the time. How could you not know? Guess I'm wrong. Months later, we got mild confirmation that sexual activity happened when a roommate that was sleeping in the bunk above them felt shaking and also heard the opening of a condom wrapper. That is what he alleges. When they were done, he gets out of bed, he gets a few of us into my room, and then he directly just tells us what he found. Even though he only grabbed probably like a handful of us, the entire house knew what we had found within hours. When I confronted V privately, at first it was like a mild denial, but then it was like followed up with the age of consent is 16 in Ohio. I didn't want to call the police only because of my own personal experiences with sexual abuse and calling the police.
So when Jisu rejects all of Sky's help, both while living at the house and afterwards, what was he supposed to do to be on your side? It's even worse when you consider that there were other people in the house who knew what was going on and did next to nothing compared to Sky. Not only did Jisu not call these people out, but literally collaborated with them to write statements that would come out against Sky. One of the people being an alleged abuser of Jisu? Don't get me wrong, everyone who lived at the house, especially Sky, should be held somewhat accountable for what took place. But that's the thing, attack the problem head on. Don't shift all of the blame onto Sky. I get that he owned the house, so he would normally share the most responsibility out of everyone, but he was the only one who did anything to help Jisu. So Jisu, when you say he tried everything in his power to make me believe he's on my side despite never having told me any of these things years ago, and I gave him one last chance to do the right thing, you sound like an idiot. So now let's move on to the next case of abuse that occurred in the house. Brandon Woody. Woody submitted 2 testimonies to the Redditor Smashcaps alleging that retired Melee player Mac D sexually assaulted him multiple times during their stay at the Sky House. However, this story is a bit more complicated than Jisu's because while Woody expressed that his roommates weren't taking his assault seriously, the housemates, including Sky, believe that there was more reciprocation than what Woody was claiming. I want to make it clear that just because there's reciprocation, it is still possible to cross certain boundaries that make the behavior unacceptable.
I did have a strong opinion about this, but my stance on it has completely changed. In my Twit longer, you will see me chastising Woody because he shares texts with me about how he wants to now watch House of Cards and cuddle with McCain because he feels that he understands him better. I was very, very upset with that because it was like, I feel like you're putting yourselves in these situations and I don't know why. You talk about how disgusted you are, but then you do it. Obviously, now that I'm much older, I look at it a lot differently. Trauma and abuse comes in many forms, and me trying to use a universal compass to navigate the waters of trauma and abuse is unacceptable and not okay at all.
No question about it. What Sky said was 100% unacceptable and textbook victim blaming. But here's where things get interesting. Why did someone flush the toilet when I said that?
The third incident actually happened inside McCain's bed, and I did not see the conception of this at all, but a roommate did, and they gave me a testimony on it, and I'm gonna obviously show it to you.
Wait, so someone actually witnessed one of the acts of abuse? You guys already know where this is going.
All I remember is that Brandon was being super irrational about this whole ordeal. Like he never told McCain to ever stop, and it seemed like he liked it at times. Didn't they sneak off into the middle room, allegedly doing things?
Yup, but in his post,
Like Brandon is just a confused kid making some cry for attention.
So tell me, Jisu, was it a consensual act where Woody liked it at times? Or was it another story of abuse that you could use to weaponize against Sky? Which is it, Jisu? It can't be both now. In fact, Woody would tell Sky that his initial response was more truthful, more accurate with dates, and admitted fault for getting Sky involved with the situation. So when Jisu made the group chat to attack Sky and included Woody in it, it sounds more like Jisu was being opportunistic. The final case is Keitaro. Keitaro admitted to statutory rape during a party at the Sky house. Sky claims that during this party, he was in his room playing League and would occasionally walk around to see what was going on, but for the most part, he wasn't very attentive to what was going on until False brought it to his attention in 2019. A big allegation pushed against Sky was that he would threaten to break private property of each of the house members if they didn't pay him $350 each. However, this is missing important context. Sky did this as a way to enforce a rule regarding unannounced guests coming to the house.
The guest rule was created for a multitude of reasons. The most important one was that I was responsible for anyone that came in. Anyone and everyone. If anything happens to anyone and I don't know, I'm just completely
Now, is this a very good excuse? Not really. But how are you going to acknowledge that he did this and also make the allegation that Sky condones sex trafficking? It just doesn't make any sense. So in conclusion, did Sky do some indefensible things? Yes. Does he condone the trafficking of minors and sexual abuse? No. In fact, I'd go as far as saying that Sky has done nothing to warrant the punishment he has received.
So how have you been doing lately, Sky? I know you've been off of social media for a while. You haven't been posting to YouTube, but I have seen you stream a couple times.
I have not been doing well. I've just kind of been existing, but I wouldn't even call it that. I know that sounds really dramatic, but it actually is that bad, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by that? Not existing?
Every single part of my life is just is gone, and I can't resume a normal life because all the background checks I've tried, I've just failed them. When you put your name Sky Williams and you have such a huge gap of work history, you want to explain, oh, I was an influencer, and then they're going to look you up. And then that's when you don't get the call back. I was fired from 3 therapists that looked up what was going on and then was oh, actually, I don't think that I can help you, or I don't think we'd be a good fit. And it's I didn't know that you can get fired from a therapist.
I didn't either.
I would talk about the fact that I believe, since everyone else believes it, and even I've said it, even though Dr. K disavowed it, everyone believes that I'm this psychopath, that I'm a sociopath, that I'm this huge mass manipulator. And so if that's true, and I'm tricking myself, then maybe a therapist would be able to tell me. So then when they ask why they think I believe that, I have to go into some sort of detail about my life. And once I do, it's over.
Along with being unable to get a job, Sky accumulated around $250,000 of debt over the past few years. If those people want their money back, then it's in their best interest to let him keep his platform so he can actually make the money to pay them back. And this is also the opinion of Spencer Samuelson, who Sky owes the most amount of money to.
Well, when I made the statement, I didn't think that it would be nearly as big as it got to be. And I think my statement in combination with others just slowly destroyed Sky's career. And I wish that, I think that there should be repercussions and stuff like that, but I don't think his entire career should be taken away. And I think people should just look at the facts more instead of calling him like Jeffrey Epstein and other things that just, in my experience with Sky, are not true. Yeah, I guess like the only thing I really regret is just how many people saw that tweet.
We don't need another entertainer hurting themselves. Anyone listening, please be patient. It's okay to be angry, and Lord knows we all need to recover from that stream, but just know he's already being made very aware of his mistakes. Jisu responded to my tweet with this message and blocked me. She had every hope for Sky hurting himself and was angry at any attempt to stop it. Her intentions were malicious from the start, and I'm glad Technicals has brought everything to light. Danny, I thought you were a good person with the right intentions. If you think anything he said was acceptable in any way and that he is redeemable, you're as bad as him. Don't talk to me ever again. Excuse me? Because I don't want him to fucking kill himself, I'm a bad person now?
On November 30th, 2021, Jisu confirmed that she was being sued by Zero for defamation. This lawsuit is the only form of punishment Jisu has received for her lies, and it's honestly the proper one. Despite the community's best attempts to ignore what's going on, the truth will be revealed eventually through the legal system. Zero's lawsuit contains 4 statements that he claims are defamatory. The first 2 are the Vanessa was 15 and Zero abused her lies that we covered earlier. Statement 3 is when Jisu claimed that he attempted to fly out a minor to meet up for sexual gratification. The alleged victim, Laura, claimed to have accidentally deleted her evidence when she reset her PC. However, then she says this:
"The Skype messages still exist."
Yeah, I thought you'd say that. I didn't exactly believe your original excuse.
But that's not the point, and he thought I was older. He did nothing wrong. I wouldn't share those messages with anyone though, at least not things that make him look bad. I'd never want to damage Zero's reputation.
Well, that was easy. The 4th statement involves Zero harassing Jisu with pornographic material on a big screen television during their shared time at the Sky House. I want to preface this by saying that there is no conclusive evidence that the situation did or didn't occur. What I am saying is that considering what we do have, there is more than enough room for reasonable doubt. This is because, number 1, the room housed around 5 people, yet none of them can confirm or deny the situation occurring, and number 2, the content Jisu claims was shown is extremely hard to find on a site that Zero claims to not use very often. The only person who could corroborate Jisu's story is Sky Williams, who, if you remember, was virtually hounded by Jisu to support her. He also gave testimony that contradicts what Vanessa said regarding Zero physically abusing her, so everything that Zero is suing Jisu for is legitimate. Either her claims were disputed by the alleged victim's own testimony, or are highly unlikely considering the circumstances. This is what we need to establish before we dive into this next part. On November 30th, 2021, Jisu announced that she would be starting a GoFundMe to help fund her legal fees, asking for $150,000, which if you're gonna ask for that much money, you might as well start a Kickstarter. However, after it was revealed that Jisu had $74,000 in her public crypto wallet, she lowered the goal to $120,000 and changed the title from this to this. And you can make of that as you will. Now let's read what this GoFundMe is all about.
While many top figures fell from grace, the biggest was the undisputed best Smash 4 player at the time and by far the largest content creator and competitor within the scene. He was found sexting multiple underage girls and attempting to solicit child porn from them, which he has since admitted to.
This is a factually incorrect statement. Only one of the allegations against Zero had any validity to it. Now obviously sexting one minor is still one too many, but my point is that anyone who makes the claim that Zero sexted multiple minors is either intentionally lying or hasn't properly informed themselves on what's going on. Then she follows it up with this:
"No matter if I'm right, the internet is not a court of law. Continuing to respond publicly with evidence would do nothing but fan the flames. We're at the point now where legal professionals are now involved and it's up to them to handle it."
Hey, Jisu, excuse me? Yeah, when you say continuing, what evidence are you talking about? You have provided no evidence whatsoever through your entire crusade, only your personal DM conversations with the accusers and other people. The only real evidence was provided by a third party, and you copy and pasted it into your document. You have not been publicly responding with evidence, only accusations and lies.
My role in this was publishing his victims' stories. I spent a lot of time talking to them individually and compiling all their evidence, which you can see for yourself here. As you can see, it is completely wrong and almost evil for him to assert such lies when the truth is staring right in his face.
Yeah, I can see why you'd remove this section of the description. Jisu, there is literally evidence proving that you lied and manipulated during the MeToo movement, and you yourself acknowledge this.
Hi Vanessa, firstly I am sorry. I could have addressed this better. It was a heated moment when I saw you in Zero's response to my tweet despite hearing/seeing all these rumors and statements about his treatment of you. We will respect your wishes. Leave her alone.
She then goes on to explain why she needs the money and how she'll spend it. Normally I wouldn't care because she's entitled to hiring her own defense, but the fact that she's being so openly dishonest and manipulative with zero self-awareness is genuinely frightening to me. If she had just simply said like, oh, I'm being sued, if you guys want to help me out, that would be nice, that would have been one thing, but that's not what she's doing. She frames her fundraiser as a stance against abusers and mentions several stories about huge companies with tons of money being able to use it to silence their victims, then tries to compare it to her situation when it's not really a one-to-one comparison considering that the victims' voices weren't silenced. I want to make this crystal clear. By donating to this fundraiser, you are, in my opinion, based on everything I've showed up until this point, supporting a pathological liar in her attempt to protect herself. She is using you, the average community member, to soften the punishment she will rightfully receive for her behavior. And the worst part is, she barely even needs your money. She can get it through other means. One of which is with NFTs. She does, after all, have around $74,000 in her public crypto wallet. As a professional artist, she can easily start pumping out NFTs and rake in the big bucks. Then, instead of deceiving people into giving her money, she'll just be causing mass environmental damage. But don't worry guys, apparently it's not that bad. Here's Jisu's article that debunks the myths surrounding NFTs and that's a lot of text. How do you write about NFTs for this long? I'm a climate activist that is okay with environmental damage if it makes me money. Yeah, I might not have the time to dissect this whole thing, but we'll see. There's part 2? Now instead of diving into these articles and learning why they're garbage, let's first hear a word from today's sponsor. Have you ever wanted to design your own custom and fancy website, but you didn't know where to start? Well, too bad. Jisu's merch store is so horrendous, I almost left this section out of the video, but not only does it kinda tie into what I was saying before, I also realized that it was way too funny for me to not make fun of. So if you go down to her mission statement, she says that Deceit.gg is a platform for social and artistic experimentation. We believe in free trade, sustainable production, while maintaining a polished high-end feel. Deceit.gg is dedicated to maintaining independence. We will remain free of corporate funding. Money is not the end goal, expression is. So with that as the goal, along with Jisu being a professional artist, you'd think that her merch would have really cool designs on them, and be very affordable for most smashers, right? Right? These are literally just plain clothes that say O2 on them. Oh yeah, let me get the O2 grinder. I've been trying to grind Fox and maybe this will help. Yo! Is that Ludwig a Gren? They have all my favorite Melee personalities like fiction. You can get hats, you can get shorts, you can get slides, you can get shirts, tees, sweaters. They say I'm not drippy, cause I'm slippy. Yo, KJH looking fly in that windbreaker, dog.
Hey, yo! I will burn this entire community to the fucking ground.
On sale for only $1,500? What a deal! This has to be a joke, right? How is putting O2 or 16 Galent 9MS on a plain t-shirt creative expression? Like, I've never seen drip go back in the faucet. And that's just part 1. Part 2 is that I can easily find similar items for cheaper prices. I understand that the price of the merch is entirely at her discretion, but what exactly warrants a higher price point? It's not like you're putting any creative designs on your clothing, which is ironic because making cool designs is literally your bread and butter. So when you brand your merch as a polished high-end feel with creative expression and vision as the end goal, especially considering that you're a pro artist, I expect more than 3 characters of text. This one, I couldn't even see the O2 until I clicked on it and oh my god, how does he stand like that? The part that really rubs me the wrong way is this.
Refunds will only be facilitated in the instance of Damaged item sent out. Order cancellation prior to shipment. Item out of stock. Items cannot be returned after being shipped out. The only instance of possible return is in the case of incorrect item fulfillment. We do not facilitate exchanges.
Keep in mind that this is clothing we're talking about. You may end up getting the wrong size, and you just have to deal with it because Jisu needs that bread for real for real. Yo, I want to be just like Aiden Calvin, saucing gamers on the court. Let me get this pink hook. Wait, I just found out that Jisu is a terrible person, and I just gave her money that I can never get back? At least I have my overpriced pink hoodie to go along with my pink frame 1 controller. It's not even plugged in. This brings us to our next section, the O2 controller. How is this sold out? Who is spending upwards of $500 for a controller? That's a whole PS5. Let's compare this controller to another one, which reminds me. The O2 controller claims to have a snapback fix, lubricated triggers and joystick notches. All are pretty cool things to have, but now let's compare this to the box. The box has equivalent features to the O2 controller, has even more, is way better for your hands, and only costs $230. She's claiming to value creative expression and high-end products over money when her products are overpriced and unimaginative. I want to just laugh at this, but considering that she also dishonestly represented her GoFundMe in an attempt to obtain money from people, it comes across as extremely disingenuous. Also, just a minor side note, but how are all January proceeds supposed to go to Genesis when most of the items on the store are sold out? I'm not going to call Jisu a scammer or a con woman or anything like that, but I'm really close. So if you want to add this section to the long list of crimes she's committed against the community, I don't blame you. At the end of the day, if you have donated to her fundraiser, purchased any of her products, or helped to promote either of these, then you have supported a liar, and I highly recommend that you, if possible, rescind your support and publicly condemn Jisu.
You also told me about a story where Jisu was organizing an event and she was looking for a bouncer, and she specifically chose you for whatever reason.
She said there was like a studio that was being rented by a couple of college students, and she was reaching out to friends. Obviously she's of age, but her friends aren't. So she was asking around people, hey, they're willing to pay people to be a bouncer just to let people in. Knowing that this city is very strict on rules like that, I could see why both bouncers didn't agree to her terms. And this is the reason why she went out searching for other people. I said to her, you know, they can actually lose their license. She just wanted to pay somebody $200 to just be a bouncer to allow her friends to come in, people that were underage.
So let's recap all the rules that Jisu has broken. 2.3.1 Physical Assault. Jisu slapped 2 people at an EVO 2019 after party. She would later admit to doing this in the screenshots we were provided. 2.3.3 Defamation of Character. Jisu has publicly lied about Zero and Sky Williams as a way to be seen as a figure for women in gaming. 2.3.6 Openly advocating for or encouraging 2.3.5 Doxing. Jisu incited a harassment campaign against Vanessa that could have led to the release of private information such as her birth certificate. 2.2.1 Directed and malicious intimidation, harassment, or bullying of any participant, whether by language or conduct. Jisu has bullied or intimidated Zero and Sky for obvious reasons, Bob when she tried to manipulate the story about being called the girlfriend, and Vanessa when she incited an entire harassment campaign against her for her birth certificate. Remember that nothing I've covered so far is new information, yet the community has done nothing meaningful to address any of the evidence against Jisu. They love to preach accountability and making people publicly address what they've done. But Jisu gets a pass for some reason. Why is that? Let's find out. Isam is someone who has gained a reputation as a pandering virtue signaler who is also a hypocrite. What's important here is that Isam has previously pushed several false allegations against others in the community.
I've also been accused of being a hypocrite for various reasons, one of which being the fact that I use my platform to amplify the voices of victims and trying to hold abusers accountable.
That is a very generous way of wording things. Nobody was calling you a hypocrite for trying to be a hero. People were actually upset at you for not abiding by the doctrine of innocent until proven guilty and damaging the reputations of innocent people. The reason why people believe in this doctrine is because it is objectively the correct and only way to properly evaluate crimes. The goal is that when an accusation is made, we should take the claims as plausible but not rush to any sort of conclusion until more facts are presented. It's important to hear out both sides because sometimes, whether intentional or not, key information can be omitted by either party. Only after reviewing all of the evidence can we come to a proper conclusion. This is the only way to reach the truth. Now, I completely understand that you want to amplify the voices of victims to help them fight their abusers. The problem is that you aren't properly filtering these voices to make sure that false allegations don't seep through the cracks.
I am sorry both to MJG and Foe for promoting false claims against them. I do not apologize for believing victims, and I will continue to do so, but I apologize for never speaking up when things I shared turned out wrong.
Isam, if the allegations are false, then they aren't victims. How are you going to acknowledge that the allegations are false, but still refer to the accusers as victims? Like, you'd think this would be obvious, right? But according to Isam, if you make an allegation, that's all it takes to become a victim. And this gets even worse, because when you adopt this doctrine of believe all allegations instead of believe all victims, or innocent until proven guilty, you're unable to filter the truth from the lies.
However, this doesn't mean that I'm going to stop standing up for victims and sharing their stories. That is something that is very important to me, especially with the climate in gaming and how victims are treated. It is very important to me that I still share those stories. I will continue to amplify victims' voices, and I encourage others to do the same, but I will be more diligent in offering clarification to situations when it is relevant.
This is how you end up pushing several false allegations, and while yes, you've apologized for spreading false information, you've still retained the very logic that caused you to spread it in the first place. So how am I supposed to believe that you won't do this again?
Leffen is literally defending victims. Jisu is a victim of multiple people in regards to sexual violence and harassment. If you think she or Leffen should be banned, you don't give a fuck about victims, and I want you out of here. Because this is a safe space for victims.
Why do you see the world like this? You're either for or against victims, no nuance. Why can't we support victims while still questioning allegations that should be questioned? Questioning is what helps us arrive at the truth. The reason people like me want to ban Leffen and Jisu isn't because we're against victims. It's because Leffen and Jisu lied and broke community rules that others were banned for. As you already know through experience, pushing false allegations is a bad thing to do and can not only threaten to ruin the reputations of innocent people, but they also make it harder for actual victims to come forward with their stories in the future, while making you look like an idiot in the process. They do more damage than just to the accused. Oh, but I didn't know the allegations were false. I was just retweeting new information. How was I supposed to know? That's not fair. Try this one on for size. Just wait. If you don't have both sides of the story yet, then it isn't fair to come to a conclusion. That doesn't mean we don't believe victims, it just means we don't know all the details, so we won't push something that can be potentially damaging unless we know it's true.
So it's interesting because what I realize what I practically do is I take the allegations seriously, but tend to not pass judgment right away.
Right.
You know,
maybe it's not for us to pass judgment all the time, right? Like, yeah. I think every individual community member doesn't need to know all of the gory details of everybody's lives. But again, that's assuming that there is someone that will demand accountability or have some kind of judgment in the end.
Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let me sum up these messages with the perfect analogy. Let's say Jisu raises 4 rats, and her friend also gives her another one. So she now has 5 rats. Now let's say we put each of those rats in their own microwave. Now, the 4 rats that Jisu raised explode, but the one she got from her friend lives. Now, which is the wrong conclusion to draw from this scientific experiment? A. Jisu is bad at raising rats. B. This is animal abuse. C. Jisu's friend is a genius. Or D, Jisu's rats are immune to microwaves. You would think the answer is obvious, but apparently it isn't to Isam and most of the community. And this is one of the ways Jisu can get away with lying. Because one of the allegations against Zero was true, now Jisu gets the benefit of the doubt even though the allegations she pushed were provably false. This has allowed Jisu to get away with spewing lies against Zero and Sky Williams without a single community figurehead batting an eye. In the past, I've been very critical of Slime and said he's a dishonest person that isn't worth anyone's time. And while I still wholeheartedly believe this, the more I thought about it, I realized that he's a perfect case study for how Jisu manipulates figures in our community in an effort to protect herself. So who is Slime? Well, he was best known for his series Slime on the Scene back in the day, which really helped him grow his presence in the Smash community. Outside of that, he's known for being friends with Ludwig, hating people who profit off of drama when he does the same thing, and his complete disregard for people's mental health. During the whole Hacks vs. Leffen debacle of last year, Slime was someone who publicly defended Leffen by streaming and poking fun at Hacks' admittedly bad videos on Leffen. Though this one's pretty good. However, when reacting to Hacks' third video, Slime said something very interesting.
Everyone knew that this was happening, about this fucking technicals video. Everyone knew about it, and Jisu asked people to... She was like, hey, this video's gonna come out and it's gonna fucking be really annoying and it sucks. And I'm like, damn, that fucking sucks. And she was like, can you like not engage with it because attention is like the engine that feeds people like this Keemstar fellow. And I was like, yeah, sure. And so that's why it was a lot of like, I'm fucking hands off, because I think it's a good point.
Mind you, this was in regards to a video by the YouTuber Technicals containing new evidence and testimony suggesting that Jisu lied about nearly everything during the MeToo movement of July 2020. In fact, that same evidence was provided at the beginning of this video. So let's see what Slime's explanation for siding with Jisu was.
And I just default to trusting victims. I just do.
Yeah, that is not what I said, and I don't think she manipulated the community. I just believe her. I don't know, it's not that complicated.
Yeah, so, Slime? That only works if there's no conclusive evidence. If it was a he said she said situation where there's no evidence to confirm or deny the allegations, then I would completely understand your stance. But there is hard evidence confirming the allegations against Jisu. But you wouldn't know that because remember, Jisu told you not to watch the video that contains said evidence. You see how this works? So long as Slime doesn't know the truth, he will blindly follow Jisu under the guise of believing victims. She could tell him that the Easter Bunny is real, and he would start blocking people who say otherwise. I hate to break this to you, Slime, but Jisu is exploiting your friendship and your mutual trust to protect herself. Not only that, but it's hilarious how you intentionally allow yourself to get manipulated. Like, I knew there was nothing on your head, but in it as well?
I don't have an argument, I just believe my friend. I am not your debate mannequin. I do not care and am literally eating a fiber smoothie right now because I have IBS.
Hey Slime, if Jisu burned down an orphanage, would you defend her? What about a mental hospital? Why or why not? So Slime and the majority of community leaders wholeheartedly believe that Jisu is innocent. However, evidence that Jisu is lying has already been released publicly. This obviously threatens their belief that Jisu is innocent and could have massive implications on the rest of the community.
So let's take the example of like someone who's in denial about being addicted to alcohol. So this person, people can approach someone who's addicted to alcohol and in denial with the most logical argument. And emotionally, if this person is not willing to accept that they have a problem, their rational mind will come up with all kinds of counterarguments, and you will never be able to convince them that they have a problem, right? Unless they are willing to entertain the idea that they have a problem, you will never be able to convince them.
Also remember that the more we invest ourselves into a belief, the more likely we are to justify that our investment was worth it. So the more the top figures publicly condemn Technical's video, the less likely they are to admit that they're wrong.
Maybe our entire community has always vehemently condemned Group A. We might have behaved hatefully towards some members of Group A ourselves in the past, based solely on this prejudice. We might also have seen Group A sympathizers being attacked and ostracized. If it turns out Group A isn't evil, we have some tough realities to face. First, we have to admit our entire community is wrong. This could tap into some hefty issues around trust, loyalty, and credibility. Second, we'll have to admit our own hateful behavior was unjustified. This could have big implications for our self-image. Third, we now face being attacked and ostracized if we defend Group A, which taps into our ideas of safety and security. These tough realities might feel intensely threatening to us, but the threat goes away if we can find some way of preserving our belief that Group A is evil.
And Slime has done just that. Let me break down all the common excuses Slime uses to defend Jisu. We've already covered the "she's my friend" and "I just believe victims" excuses, but he also likes to use what I call the box technique. Essentially, you use an ad hominem in a way that's dismissive and belittling in an attempt to discredit their stance as meaningless.
So there is a subgroup of people that are very fervent about these expose videos. I'm gonna try as hard as I can not to say the person's name, but I'm also in general addressing the sort of the group themselves that are very fervent and reply a lot, watch a lot of anime, right? And I'm going to call them, well, I have a name for them. The Incel Squadron Invading Smash, or ISIS for short.
This is the amount of displacement Slime needs in order to bring technicals down to a level he feels he can beat. He's not actually engaging with the evidence because he refuses to even look at it. And also he'd lose if he tried. He'll watch hacks, make fun of him all day long, but he won't watch the actually well-structured video with the damning evidence because Jisu needs him to preserve a false belief.
I brought this up in reference to the fact that Sky Williams' life realistically never would have been ruined if Leffen had never existed. So now I'll bring...
I don't think that's true. I really don't think what he said is true, because I feel like what happened when Sky Williams was in the crossfire is that there was a lot of stuff that he did. Attention is like the engine that feeds people like this Keemstar fellow.
And notice how none of the statements he just made debunk anything presented against Jisu. He's not arguing to prove that Technicals is wrong, he's arguing with himself to prove why he doesn't have to listen. And if he doesn't have to listen, he's not at risk of having his mind changed, which he can preserve his false belief that Jisu is innocent. And the best part about all of this is that if you challenge his excuses, he doesn't feel pressured in any way, because if he's ever wrong, he doesn't have to admit it. After all, he doesn't care.
It doesn't sound like you don't care. Well, that's a hard question. Like that's kind of a gotcha ish Logic Man thing, right? Because it's like, we all care, right? We're all in here, but it's like, what do I not care about? That's a better framed question that allows me to actually answer it instead of being like, whoa. You know? So you're a cunt, is what I'm saying.
This is personally my favorite play in his playbook. He can just cop out and not have to take any responsibility for enabling a pathological liar, but does he actually not care?
Do you think I stream these to disseminate propaganda or something? Like some sort of planned effort? I get a huge viewer spike just to react to a weird dude. There's no caping, there's no team, I would not watch it otherwise because I don't have to make community decisions.
I don't know if you know this, but people who just react to a weird dude don't go out of their way to reply to a tweet that didn't even @mention them. Not only that, but in general, you'll also go out of your way to block people who have never interacted with you before solely because they support hacks. It's fine to block people, but don't block these people and then act like you don't care about the drama. If you don't care, why are you going out of your way to do these things? Like, it's not just people who appear on his Twitter feed that he's tweeting about. This man literally goes out of his way to find people he disagrees with and block them, then tries to say, I have no stance.
And I'm not gonna watch a fucking 2-hour video about someone who I know personally that says that they're a liar. I have a conspiracy. Zero interest. Because I can just ask them in which I haven't, some sort of. Because let's also be clear, I don't give a shit about an anime on hacks video. And you know what else? No one's reached out to me saying everyone's fucking ISIS is so angry at me all the time.
This is a prime example of the most secure human being on planet Earth. You're doing a lot of justifying and explaining for somebody who doesn't care about this drama. In fact, doing these streams kinda shows that you are invested on a certain level, because if you weren't, you would listen to your own words.
And she was like, can you not engage with it because attention is like the engine that feeds people like this Keemstar fellow?
The easy answer is that he does care, and if you do actually care, Slime, then answer this question for me. Why do you continue to defend Jisu even when the evidence suggests that she's lying? What would it take for you to condemn Jisu? Now look, Slime, I may have come across as a bit aggressive and angry in my original video. I was simply frustrated with the fact that you wouldn't even acknowledge the possibility that Leffen and Jisu are in the wrong, and by not condemning them, it would only make things worse. However, while my tone may have been over the top, I still stand by everything I said in that video because the evidence supports me. I know my respect means literally nothing to you, but if you were to simply admit that you're wrong, I, along with thousands of others, would respect you more. As you once said, a public space is good for accountability. Well, as hard as it may be, it's time to hold your friend accountable. Hugs is also someone I've talked about before on this channel. He's someone who doesn't properly inform himself on certain issues before forming an opinion, and this can have negative effects considering he's a prominent figure in our community with a large influence. Now since then, a lot of things have transpired, namely that lawsuit against Jisu. Let's see who the highest contributor to Jisu's GoFundMe. Oh my god. Like, I know at this point calling someone a simp is pretty childish and degenerate, but Hugs just does it to himself. Hugs when guy gets robbed, hugs when Jisu. Openly defending and supporting Jisu when there is evidence proving she's a liar is already pretty dumb, but when you've contributed to 10% of her GoFundMe, you've hit a new low. Obviously, Hugs is entitled to do whatever he wants with his money, but let's not pretend like he isn't funding a manipulator. Back to what I said in the last section, this will only make it harder for Hugs to admit that he's wrong, because now he'll also have to admit that he helped fund Jisu. This may cause him to further rationalize dumb reasons for why she's innocent. I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, but one thing has become increasingly clear. Hugs will refuse to condemn Jisu for the foreseeable future. So today, I want to show you guys the other side of Hugo Gonzalez, and hopefully, help to change his mind. Westballs is a professional Melee player who was a victim of several false allegations during the July 2020 Smash MeToo movement, and would lose most of his following as a result. While his innocence has now been recognized by the community, the damage has already been done, and Westballs is still losing followers today. Hugs has been a great friend with Westballs for around a decade now. You would think that someone who defends his friend Jisu as vehemently as he does would have done something to support his other friend Westballs through this very stressful. Hugs never defended Westballs when his allegations were made, and he hasn't acknowledged his innocence after them either. In fact, I wanted to try out a little experiment, so I went into advanced search and looked at the last time Hugs made a tweet in reference to Westballs. The latest one I could find was this one that was posted a week before the allegations were made. He also no longer follows him on Twitter, despite following pretty much every other prominent Smash community figurehead. But then I scrolled down, and I see he was ice skating with Jisu like 2 weeks ago. Despite Jisu's allegations of being an opportunistic liar and manipulator where there is hard evidence that confirms basically everything, Hugs is perfectly fine with not only associating with her, but donating 4 figures of money to her. But the second his good friend Westballs is dealing with his own allegations that were made with no evidence by a woman who literally went to jail for chasing someone with a knife, he gets left out to fend for himself. And he wonders why PewDiePie calls him a simp.
But I think there's just a lot more shit they have to do.
Sam!
Whoa!
You don't understand. You have it really bad, alright?
Okay, well, I actually can't tell now. Wait, so is he calling me a simp or not?
Then we go a year later, and Hax makes his evidence.zip video. Hugs, who didn't even watch it, mind you, responds to it by saying things like,
My initial reaction was that Hax is not fine. Okay, Hax is not okay. I like Hax. I genuinely like Hax. I've known him for a long, long time. I've known him since he was like 13. I've always found him to be a positive presence anytime I've been around him. So to see this it didn't make me happy. It kind of made me go, God damn it, Hacks, what the hell did you do to yourself?
So why didn't you reach out to him to see if he was doing okay? It's very disingenuous to insinuate that Hax is your friend, yet do nothing to help him in his time of need. It's pretty apparent that Hugs has a pretty skewed definition of the word friend. So if you ever see him defending Jisu because she's my friend, it's dumb not only because Jisu is guilty, but also because, to Hugs, friends are things that are disposed of when necessary in order to save face with the rest of the community. He is someone whose ego is so massive that he thinks there is nothing about him worthy of criticism. I hope this section and my previous video have proven that this isn't the case. It's even worse when you consider that the majority of the claims came from one of your friends, Princess Hyrule, so it's almost as if you condone the false allegations. You're a great friend, Hugs. Keep it up. Hugs, I'll ask the same question I asked Slime. Why do you continue to defend Jisu even when the evidence suggests that she's lying? What would it take for you to condemn Jisu? In fact, I'm not even asking for you to apologize to Westballs. What was done is done, and you've made your stance on his situation very clear to everyone. All I'm asking for is for you to keep that same energy for Jisu. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of the video. Time for us to talk about Leffen. Remember, I'm an obsessed Keemstar Jr. I don't know anything else. Leffen had direct contact with Jisu prior to her first allegation against Zero. At first, nobody believed Jisu's allegations and would only come to accept them as true once Zero admitted to Katie's story. But there was another force at play here that convinced an entire community that Jisu was telling the truth, and that force is named Leffen.
With all the credibility that I have, because most people didn't even know what I look like online until pretty recently. And I've had people think that I was a guy for years. But I thought it was messed up when I was saying everything I was saying, and immediately, because I'm trying to cancel one of their favorites, they're like, oh, there's absolute zero credence. And it didn't take me fighting for myself, it took me going to my friends who are guys who had bigger platforms to back me up. And it took multiple of them for them to believe me. It's what? I've never lied. Why would I lie about this right now?
After Jisu accused Zero of harassing her with hentai, Leffen tried to corroborate her story with a story of his own, where Zero was sharing hentai with Japanese players at Apex 2013. However, the players involved claimed that Leffen was wrong about the situation and that they never shared hentai with Zero. Later, Leffen shared another false story about Zero, claiming Zero sent a minor hentai in his Discord server without confirming their age. However, the person was not a minor at the time, so the only thing Zero is guilty of in that situation is being irresponsible. Leffen tried to corroborate Jisu's false allegations with false allegations of his own. The problem was that the evidence and testimonies that debunked these allegations would not be released until a year later, so people began to see the number of allegations ramping up and began to believe that Jisu was telling the truth.
Yeah, so when Leffen told the story, I literally did not remember a single detail about it. At the time, I was so pressured from all of these other scenarios that I just kind of said, okay, fine, if Leffen is saying this, then sure, maybe it happened and I don't remember, and it's not like there's surveillance camera footage to check, right? Yeah. So I just said, that's fine, I'll just apologize. I later learned that me apologizing was seen as me admitting fault, which was weaponized against me later, and people took it as fact, and therefore they took Jackie's story as fact, which to me is a massive problem because Jackie's story had zero details whatsoever. But because I apologized to Leffen, suddenly it became that now I'm guilty for Jackie. To be honest, it felt like a trap. It felt like it was a planned moment. That's when I realized that what's happening to me right now is not one person, it's multiple people.
When it comes to pushing false allegations, Leffen is Esam without a soul. Around the same time, M2K was forced to reveal extremely personal information about himself in order to debunk the allegations made against him. Leffen was also right there to spread those as well. The issue with these seemingly innocuous messages is that Leffen could have easily asked M2K in private for his side of the story. Leffen wouldn't apologize to M2K until over a year later after hacks brought it up in evidence.zip 3. In fact, this was Leffen's initial response.
Any comment that I started the rumor about M2K is false. I was streaming and people posted his name in chat, and I posted asking about it. The VOD is here and you can check. Very brave for M2K to go out what he said though. I feel extremely bad for him.
For an entire year, He tried to act like he didn't help spread M2K's allegations and only apologized when he was cornered. I know M2K wants to be left out of this, and please do not hound him after this video. I know many people will look at this and go, "Oh, but thefranChise, M2K is happy with Leffen's apology and wants to move on. Why can't you?" The reason I'm bringing this up is because this is a recurring pattern of behavior. It's not an M2K exclusive thing. I do not believe he is being genuine with his apology to M2K, otherwise he would have already apologized to Westballs for pushing his allegations, and also admitted that the allegations he pushed against Zero were false. He even referred to Zero as a friend in his first twitlonger containing a false allegation, then when Zero confronted him about it, Leffen would block him and leave him to drown by himself. He pushes allegations without vetting them, then when they turn out to be false, he refuses to apologize because he was just defending victims. He tries to use the Isam defense, but he's not actually sorry for what he did. Isam at the very least acknowledged that the allegations he pushed weren't true, apologized for them, and retracted them. Leffen has done none of that. While he has now apologized to M2K, he still has to answer to all of his crimes. Not only did he make his own false allegations, but he did so to corroborate Jisu's false allegations as well. Combined with the fact that he spoke with Jisu before they made their accusations, and I don't see how it's a reach to say that they conspired to hijack the MeToo movement for their own personal gain. I sincerely hope that this lawsuit against Jisu uncovers the messages sent between those two to confirm whether or not they were in cahoots. Or maybe they weren't. Maybe Leffen had no idea that Jisu was lying and was just trying to push allegations to corroborate his friend. Even if that's the case, you still need to apologize to everyone you pushed false information against, Leffen. Oh, and also if that's the case, then you need to condemn Jisu. So we finally reached the end of our journey. Jisu has committed crime after crime and gets away with it all thanks to her powerful friends who support and enable her actions. I honestly can't wait to see the look on their faces when she loses her lawsuit and she gets exposed as a liar and a fraud. I hope everyone who watched this video has come to a similar conclusion that I and many others have. Jisu became a voice for women in gaming, not because she wanted justice for those who were harmed, but because she could use the positive attention to boost her standing and reputation within the community. She donated to charity with Monopoly money, and those who needed the support the most have been used and spat on for Jisu's personal gain and ego. And her actions reflect poorly on the rest of the community, especially considering all they have done to support her. Doing photo shoots for her merch, donating to her legal defense, or refusing to even look at the evidence against her to begin with. It's sad that the community I once called home has devolved into the state that it is now. And many of these people who have sided with her, I really don't have anything against them. If they would just condemn Jisu and hold her accountable, I wouldn't have to make this video. But maybe this is what is needed in order for anything to be said. So if they aren't gonna say it, I will. Ban Jisu. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time.